From the seediest quarter of the city comes Ultimate Tavern Terrain, the cheapest, most versatile miniature wood terrain ever. And we'll show you how to make it today on Dungeon Craft. Greetings, this is Professor Dungeon Master coming to you from Dungeon University. The rest of our institutions of higher learning may have shut down, but here at Dungeon University, we are still hard at work teaching you how to run a better game of D&D. Level up your game by subscribing and click that bell icon so you'll be notified as soon as we upload new videos. Today we're talking Ultimate Tavern Terrain, which is the latest in our Ultimate Dungeon Terrain series. But Ultimate Tavern Terrain doesn't just mean taverns, it's versatile and it can be any building in any urban environment that has a wood floor. It's double-sided so you can have a tavern or whatever building on one side and a sewer system on the other side. There's no grid. We measure distance in zones instead because grids slow things down, and they also can obscure the cool-looking detail you want your players to see. It's flat so it can be stored anywhere. I store most of my stuff beyond a piano, actually. Let's take a look at some of the features of the terrain. I will give you the 360 and I'll give you a little tour. Many of these pieces, like this wall and these stairs and the tables, I made myself. So this is what it looks like as a large tavern, but of course it's very versatile, and within moments it can be a bunch of other things. A bedroom, a wizard's study, a warehouse, or a mad scientist laboratory. Here it's set up for my adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The board abstractly represents the entire house. The outmost ring, where the characters are, represents the area outside the house. The outer circle represents the mundane rooms, the kitchen, parlor, bedroom, etc. The inner circle represents the important room where the action is. When the characters kick in the door and enter the inner circle, they are within melee range of Dr. Frankenstein and his creature. The thief, meanwhile, is still in the outer circle. She can see into the room, but cannot enter the combat except with a ranged weapon. So I'm going to show you how to make this zone terrain and this building front today. Super easy, really cool. Let's go to the table and I'll show you how we do it. Here's our ultimate sewer terrain, and we're going to put our ultimate tavern terrain on the other side. We're just going to flip that. If you haven't seen Ultimate Dungeon Terrain 2.0, this outside ring is an inch wide. The next circle is about 9 centimeters or about 3.5 inches wide. I used a saucer to make the inmost circle. I'm going to make the planks about 1 centimeter wide. They don't have to be precise because old floors were hand hewn, so they didn't have uniform size boards. So you can just eyeball it. If one plank is larger than another, that's okay. But every few planks you want to check to make sure that you're not getting too big. I make the inner circle boards at a different angle to more clearly differentiate the combat zones. I tape off the center and outer ring with painter's tape to protect them for this next step. Take a dental tool or wood carving tool and score the foam lengthwise. This will give you an exaggerated grain that will look great when you dry brush it later. Time to delineate the planks. I use my Velocity Gel Roller 1.6 pen, see a link below, and make them between 1.5 and 2 inches long. Shorter than that will look weird, and I stagger the planks so they don't look too matchy. Using a toothpick, I poke 2 nail holes into the ends of each board. Then I remove the painter's tape in the center and add nail holes and texture to the inner circle as well. This looks kind of boring, but it adds great detail and it really sells the piece. Look at how awesome it looks close up. Then we add texture to the outside ring by giving it the old aluminum foil stamp. The next step is Mod Podge. I mix a little black or gray paint with it, and I'm going to cover the surface. I'm going to use a medium-sized brush, and I'm going to apply a very thin coat so I don't obscure the detail. The key here is to move slowly and methodically. I paint the wood with brown craft paint. The outside ring looks pretty good from far away, but close up, nah. I'm actually going to paint it tan with a few blocks of golden brown and gray for variation. I set it aside to dry for 2 hours before dry brushing. I'm going to use my Army Painter Vehicle / Terrain brush, which is a medium-sized brush and it's got a very flat edge, great for dry brushing. When you dry brush wood, try to use a smaller brush if you can, it'll better pick out the detail. I will use 2 colors, Craft Smart Honey Brown, I chose this color, because of Tabletop Witchcraft, which is a great channel. They had an episode on painting wood, and I like the look. And the inner circle is going to get honey brown, and once it dries, it's going to get tan, so it's just a little bit lighter. I wait until the next day so it's completely dry before washing the inside rings with Agrax Earthshade and the outside ring with black wash. And here it is the next day. Just hit it with some Minwax spray satin sealer and it's ready for the table. Now for the front, which is highly detailed but super cool. This idea comes from DM Scotty at the DM's Craft, and he was inspired by Hollywood sets, right? Where you don't create the whole building, you just show the front of the building because that's what's important. This is 12 inches long. If I put it like that, we're losing all this space. What we want to do is make it smaller so we can move it up. There's 3 or 4 different materials we could use to make this wall. This one was made with just cardboard. Now the good thing about corrugated cardboard, it's cheap. The bad thing is you got to get a bigger piece than this because you would never want to cut across the grain. If you do, you can slice your finger off. This is why I have a scar on that thumb. It went right through the nail. Corkboard is great because it's easy to work with. The problem is it's pretty thin and it's bendable. So you're going to want to coat it with glue. Once it's coated with glue, it'll get pretty stiff. Foam core. This piece is a spare piece I have. It's double thick. Pink insulation foam. This is a little thicker than the foam core. It's probably a little too thick for the wall. If you have a Proxxon cutter and you could make it, say, half the thickness, this would be ideal to work with. But not everybody has a Proxxon cutter, and you're better off with one of the other materials if you don't. We're going to use this laminate floor tile as a base. If you don't have laminate floor tile, there's certain boxes. Like once in a while you get a box of rice or something that's got one of that really stiff, thin cardboard. That'll work almost as well. So now we have our wall. It's 6 inches long and 2.5 inches high. I've carved these posts out of pink insulation foam, and they're going to be glued on the ends. We're just going to use white glue or wood glue. There's always going to be a step up to the door and down on the other side because we don't want water getting into our building. If you want to see how to make a cool door, I'm going to have a link to my video on making doors. But here's the thing. I'm really cheap and lazy. And there's a cheaper way to get doors, which is WizKids doors, right? 2 of them come in a package. They look like this. They open and shut. They're like $5 for 2 of them. So this is a way easier way to get doors of a lot of detail really quickly. Here's the door. I cut it out, and we're going to place the windows, and we're going to put them at about the 2 centimeter mark from the ground. I cut out this template. It's 1 inch wide and about 3/4 of an inch high. Before completing the windows, we're going to do the base on the bottom. Right, I just drew out the 1/2 inch that'll correspond to there. We cut a thin sliver off. Now we're just going to put this on here, and so I've drawn a fieldstone pattern, and I've also made beams out of balsa wood because I had it laying around. One of the great things about balsa is it's easy to cut with a craft scissor, and you can use that dental tool and carve a grain into it. It already has a grain, but this will give it an extra grain and really make it pop. So the bottom half is going to be fieldstone. The top half is going to be that traditional Tudor look. So you want to frame out the windows, and then we're going to cut out the windows, and we're going to put like a cross beam there, because that's the way those windows actually looked. And of course, once we finish this side, we're going to flip it over and do the exact same thing with the other side. Oh, one more detail I forgot. Before you put the glue on here, make sure you stamp this with some aluminum foil and give it some texture. And it'll give it that patchy, uneven texture as if it were plaster. It's important that you glue it with white glue, with PVA glue, not try to hot glue it together, because the hot glue will melt the styrofoam. When I complete my wall, I take some popsicle sticks and I'm going to cut them up, and I'm going to just trim them with a craft scissor and glue it in place with white glue or tacky glue. This is going to make it way more durable and playable. Next day it's dry. We're going to use the same colors that we use on the stone, which is Craft Smart Tan, your standard brown for the timbering, so it matches with the rest of our finish to both sides. We've done a couple of coats of brown on the timbering. And we're alternating between 3 colors on the stone. Craft Smart Tan, that's always the base coat, gray, and some honey brown stones. I got this technique from Black Magic Craft. Props to Jeremy over there. He's got a great video on how to make stones more realistic. I painted the plaster honey brown. Next I'll go over it with Thin Reaper Linen White. This will give it a splotchy kind of look, very realistic. We're going to make the base out of laminate floor tile. It's crescent shaped to make the edge of the terrain, so I traced the arc using our Lazy Susan and craft scissors to shape the edge. I created the cobblestones using Green Stuff Neatite putty, very easy to work with. I rolled out the pattern with Green Stuff World's roller. This is the small cobblestone pattern. Tip: make sure you wet the surface before rolling it out so the green stuff doesn't stick to the roller. I paint the cobblestones tan and then mix in a few golden brown and gray ones for variety, then dry brush tan again. I wash the wood beams Agrax Earthshade and the stones black, taking it from this to this. So cool. Now let me teach you a trick with these windows. This is made of a material that we call granny grading, right? It's found in the sewing department of your craft store. I like the kind that comes in black. And what you do is you just slip it into the window. You cut it to fit, right? And it just pops in there. You don't need to glue it. I measure out a piece of wax paper. Just put that little square in there. And then I have another piece of granny grading. And I've trimmed them so they're exactly the same size. Pop that in. And with a tiny bit of adjustment, you've got some frosted leaded windows. I got the sign from my bit box. Not really sure where it came from, but I'm glad I saved it. The Manticore is an old Games Workshop transfer decal. You can find them on eBay. You can create a simple sign with a craft wood rectangle or balsa wood and pink foam. And here's the finished product. If you dig this video, drop a comment and share. Below you'll find links to the Dungeon Craft Facebook group and Patreon, where you can see an extended version of this video where I show you how to craft a staircase. This has been Professor Dungeon Master for Dungeon Craft. Thanks so much for watching, and may all your saves be 20s.
Deathbringer, the Dungeon Craft mascot here. Click on these videos, or I will fill this tavern with slaughter. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, misread that. Laughter. Watch more Dungeon Craft.